Welcome to the Code 4 Couples podcast, focusing on topics for law enforcement officers and couples to keep you and your relationship connected, resilient, and Code 4. Now, your host, law enforcement expert Cyndi Doyle, author of Hold the Line and My Wife.
Welcome back to the Code 4 Couples podcast. I'm your host, Cyndi Doyle. Nice to have y'all back again. Thank you very much for joining me. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that, from what I hear from when I go on law enforcement podcasts, nobody wants to talk about. I'm more than happy to talk about it. And I found somebody else that likes to talk about it. And her name is Shannon Brown. And Shannon sent in her interest form to me, and I jumped all over it because Shannon has some really great information. Let me tell you a little bit about Shannon before we start. Shannon, I'm going to have to get this clarified, Shannon. You are a marriage and family therapist, or you are a retired marriage and family therapist?
No, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist currently, and I am practicing currently.
Okay. Yeah. And you have been practicing for over 20 years is what I know. And you are also doing coaching now, which is super exciting because then you can help couples other places and not just within our state. As licensed clinicians, we are only licensed by the state where people live. I can't serve people outside of Texas. So what's really cool about Shannon is, as she's gone through her career, is she's found patterns with people going through affair recovery. So today we're going to be talking about affairs and what to do when you find out or when an affair is revealed, because there is a lot of potential problems, and I'm going to even use the word trauma, that could be created if a couple does not know what to do when they find out about the affair. So Shannon actually offers a program online that provides easy and understand and direct approach to recovering, healing, and reconnecting after an affair. Oh, and by the way, Shannon is also a law enforcement spouse of 16 years. And so that was another reason why I jumped all over Shannon, because she gets exactly what we go through and the ups and downs and knows the vulnerability that we all face. So I just thought she was perfect to come on. So Shannon, thank you so much for being on the podcast and taking time out with me this morning to do this.
Yes, thank you. I was very pleased and felt blessed to be able to come on and do this morning.
Yay. I was saying it's something that, as a clinician, a couples therapist, I see that people don't know what to do after they find out about an affair. But before we talk about that, I want to back up just a little bit and get your take on something. I'm winging it here a little bit, so I hope you'll roll with me. But my take is that a lot of people think, oh, we are doomed to have affairs. And there's a lot of talk within our communities that, oh, affairs are just prevalent. I was actually talking to my podcast interview yesterday, and he was talking about that unacceptable behavior continues to get normalized. And sometimes there are departments that it's just really common. It's actually one of the reasons why I decided to do what I was doing, because we saw a bunch of people that were getting divorces. I don't know, some of them had affairs. Some of them were like, why would you do that to yourself? But whatever. So what's your thought on affairs within our community, the percentage wise, or you know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, in terms of law enforcement and or just first responder community, I think it is pretty high, but it is also high in a lot of other professions as well. I don't necessarily think that they're exponentially higher in because again, I think it has to do more with the aspects of the career, shift work maybe, where you get really disconnected in the relationship. Because maybe you're traveling, where you're traveling a lot, salespeople, that kind of thing. You've got these pieces that have really more to do with it, aspects of the relationship versus it just being law enforcement or.
Agree. I think there are a couple of components, and I talk to my couples and I speak about this some, in the fact that sometimes the brain can get confused, an officer's brain can get confused about kind of that sparkly object syndrome of I need a hit And
Definitely.
there kind of can be this idea of, oh, where can I go find some excitement? I have a story that I tell where I have this guy on Instagram who DMs me every now and then. He's like, Cyndi, a badge bunny, and she's trying to talk to me, and I'm trying not to talk to her. I'm talking to you. And I'm like, cool. All right. But it's sometimes that hit, that
Absolutely.
excitement can sometimes cause some of that. And I think you hit the other one too, of the idea of shift work. We don't see each other, kind of the thought among officers that, oh, I'm trying to protect you by not sharing information. I think maybe those two also.
Oh, yeah. I hear that a lot. I'm lucky to not have that in my particular relationship. He loves to come home and tell me, I think he keeps some things from me, but I hear that a lot. And that's another big piece, actually, is that I think that when we're not a part of each other's worlds, we're not kind of aware of what is going on in each other's worlds outside of our home life. So that's work and whatever else. And we're not talking about that and sharing about that, then that creates a disconnect, right? I don't even know what you're doing for 8 hours. What's going on for you? Where are you at? What's going on in your world? Kind of the love map idea. And that can, again, just creates that disconnect between people. And then, yes, officers out there, I think too, wanting to talk about what happened, that they don't feel they can talk about with their spouse, that dead guy on the road or whatever the thing is, they can talk about it and commiserate together. And of course, that if it's someone of the opposite sex or someone that they're attracted to, can then, of course, it's a slippery slope when you start. I mean, it can be. It's not always, but it can be. Yeah.
I think you hit it. The majority of the time I talk to people because it's pretty rare that somebody just takes off their pants and falls into somebody. It's more about the slippery slope. And in my experience, and I'm curious about yours, it's either partner. It's not necessarily more officers than it is spouses. I have both. And I'm guessing that you have the similar experience.
Absolutely. And it's not just males, it's females. And you can't really just generalize to one particular.
I wanted to normalize some of those maybe stereotypes that we think of or that we talk about to our audience, because I wanted to make sure that y'all know that, hey, there's an aspect here that's preventable. I think the other thing that I want to mention, since we're going to be talking about affairs, is that it can seem like the relationship is really good and a really strong relationship, and there can still be an affair. So many times.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're saying that.
Yeah, talk about it. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, because that isn't talked about a lot. So it's interesting you just brought that up, Cyndi, because yeah, I mean, I would say the majority of the folks that come in aren't talking about this horrible chronic issue, problem. It is they're good couples. They're strong couples. They've maybe couples that have been together for a long time. There's children. They've had some long history of really good. So yeah, it's not just those really bad couples that are susceptible to affairs. I think all people are. All people in all relationships are vulnerable at times to an affair. And that's why I'm big on affair proofing, which ironically, I always talk about, and people don't necessarily like this, especially when they're in the recovery process. But I say, look, by you actually having this affair in your relationship, going through this recovery process and doing all of this work that you're doing, you now are affair proofing your relationship. I mean, I don't think everybody necessarily believes that again in those moments. It's like, yeah, right, my partner's going to do that again. But yeah, that's actually, I've seen that. I've seen it happen. Like they feel solid, they feel good. But there's a lot of work, of course, that needs to happen to get to that place. But
absolutely. So let's get to that. Let's talk about when an affair is revealed. And I know that I've had people reach out to me, and unfortunately it's hard to get into a counselor or to get to somebody. It's like you got to go to the ER, and there's no ER for mental health or no ER for affair recovery, except maybe now your course, because now I know that exists. Many times after an affair is revealed or it's discovered, couples don't know what to do, and they can cause more damage in a situation. So what are some of the steps that you recommend to couples after an affair is revealed?
Well, first and foremost, I think they should get some kind of support, whether it is by a therapist, a coach, if they're connected to a church, maybe their pastor or something, or get some kind of support and help and guidance from someone who actually is a friend of the relationship. Because oftentimes I see people reaching out, maybe the female reaches out to their friend or the male reaches out to their friend, and they're not necessarily friends of the relationship.
Or
They're
parents.
friends.
I
Oh,
think parents are a
okay.
problem too.
That's a good
Reaching out,
point.
I call my
That
mom and
can
dad,
be.
and he calls his mom and dad, and now we're going to
Can
have
be.
problems because now our parents are going to take sides, and what is that going to do in the relationship?
Yeah, I have seen that. I've seen
Mhm.
also where I have the good side of that is there's those parents that are pro the relationship. They get back there and figure it out, or you guys are a good couple. Let's work
Figure it
on that.
out.
Let's look at that. Figure that out. You guys, they are pro the relationship. But if they're not, then they're, oh, leave them. They're she's a this, and they're not good people, or why would you stay? Those kinds of things. So I definitely think that's the first step. Get that support from somebody who is not only a pro, a pro the relationship, but also ideally, of course, a professional that knows what steps to take. And I really believe in my program, we talk a lot about set people up first and foremost with let's commit, because I think this kind of ambivalence that can sometimes happen. Should we stay? Should we go? I think that sometimes gets in the way versus let's just make a commitment and then let's see what happens, because we can always change our mind down the line. And when you have that full energy and full commitment on the recovery process, I think then that really sets you up again for just more success. And you can start to really focus in on what you need to be focused in on versus the questioning. I also feel that I talk a lot about the possibilities, because I think there's a lot of hopelessness a lot of times. Oh my gosh, can we make it? Will I ever trust again? Will she or he ever trust me again? There's a lot of hopelessness. There's a lot of questions whether we're going to be able to make it or not. I talk a lot about the possibilities can happen from going through the process, which is deeper conversations, a deeper relationship, a more meaningful relationship than maybe you had before. Maybe you had a really good, solid relationship for years, but now you have this opportunity to go even deeper with your relationship and have a better understanding of each other and the ins and outs. I could obviously go on and on about this.
Well, I'm going to back us up even more and thinking about that moment that somebody finds out or reveals about the affair. Usually the partner wants to, what I find out, or what I hear a lot of times is they want to know details. Do you think what do you think about finding out details?
I do think it is part of the recovery process is to have a full disclosure. There are caveats, and I do think it needs to be done preferably with a professional, because the professional can help guide that so that it is productive, because that can spiral and just be more damaging. I definitely think that, yes, I do think that there is a place for that. The betrayed partner, I think, needs to call the shots on that in terms of, because sometimes it's rare, but I've had betrayed partners who have said, I don't want to know anything. Okay, then that's fine. You get to.
Right.
That's rare again, but I have seen that.
I think I would say part of what I tell my couples, which I imagine you do too, is that idea of you can't unlearn anything. And as
bingo,
law enforcement officers get this, right? You can't unsee something. And that's part of what they many times want to protect us from, is seeing what they see on a regular basis. When we're talking about an affair, just gets trauma on the street and them seeing brain matter, right? That could be trauma. This process of finding out about an affair, from my understanding, my training could be trauma. It's a trauma response. Our body reacts as such, because your whole world is now, you're questioning what matters, what was real, right?
Yes. And that's why I say there's caveats, because I think one of the big ones is talking about if there was a sexual relationship. We don't need to be going into details about the sexual relationship. Absolutely not. There's no reason for that, because you're right. It's just going to be in that person's brain. They're going to be just, I mean, and this happens when someone gets a hold of someone's messages and they've read through every single message that was, and the things they can't unsee that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's definitely don't want that to be the way that we disclose. Oh, here's all my messages that I gave my affair partner. Right? No. But when it's from what point A, from point B, time frames, when did it start? When did it end? Who was it with? We've got some generalized things that I think people need to kind of put the puzzle together in their head. And I do think that's part of recovery, just recovering and to just have some of that knowledge, because I think it also speaks to the trust building and the security building. Like, are you now telling me the truth? Because you haven't been for X, Y, and Z time. Are you now telling me the truth? And I can hang my hat on that. Right.
I think that when you're, and I had written that down to come back to that, it was the truth aspect. One of the nuances of first responders having a partner, like if the first responder is the betrayed partner, what I have found is that their hypervigilance just doesn't shut down. She just made, I wish you could have seen her face. She just rolled her head and her eyes at the same time. Why did you do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I obviously have my experience with my own husband, and I know that there's this tendency to just escalate, and the voice raises and the tension, I think overall in their body and their mind. And again, that trauma response, that just all of the senses are just firing up. Right.
Yeah. And then coming home to a situation where they were the betrayed partner, what I find is that they can't relax. It takes a lot of work to move into that trust and that safe place of safety again, where they were off, they were doing their thing. Home was their place to be safe, and they would do whatever they need to do. And now they're continuing to be hypervigilant because of the affair.
Yeah, because one of the things, and this makes me think of something with my husband, where he's so unobservant. He's a detective, right? But in the house, he's so unobservant. I'm just like,
sorry, I'm
did
laughing
you not
so
see
hard.
that? Wow, I thought you were. But what's making me say that is he says I turn it off when I come home. He doesn't.
Right.
He wants to be able to turn off all of that. He's not even one of those guys that has his radio going ever in the house. Right. I think there are officers that do that for some reason, but he does not. He comes home, everything gets taken off and everything's put in the closet and everything's turned off. And now I'm not going to be observant, and I want to be chill and calm and let my mind rest. And you're right. So now that's that safe place of just completely letting it all go. And you're right. If they're coming home and now they're being triggered in their own home, right?
Yeah. How do you work with people to start to trust again? I think that is, even as a clinician, that is super hard to assist people or to motivate them or to just get them to move from that space of wanting to protect themselves. You're going to have to extend the trust. Both people have to extend trust again. And I think that betrayed partner extending trust, it's so hard. What advice do you have, or how do you do that?
It is really hard. And I think the biggest component, nobody likes to hear this, but it's time. I think a whole lot of time has to go by, but what are we doing within that time is crucial too. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen is that the unfaithful partner is just so open that they show it. It's like they're breathing openness, if you will. There's just a constant, hey, I want you to know where I'm at. I'm checking in with you. I'm letting you know my location. I'm FaceTiming you, saying, hey, I'm at the home. Just this willingness to just whatever you need, right? Whatever you need. You need to call me in the middle of the day because you're triggered, call me. You need, if you feel the urge to look at my phone, okay, here it is, open book. Here's my passcode. Just a very much an openness, transparency, 24/7. And you do that over time, that's when I see the betrayed partner starting to relax, starting to trust again. But it does take a long time for sure.
What do you think the betrayed partner's responsibility is in regard to trust?
Well, they need to accept what's being given too, because I see a lot of just hands up type of thing or rejecting what's coming towards them. If they are trying to be open and they're not accepting it, and if they're just kind of going into their fight response all the time with their partner, constantly wanting to jump on them, constantly wanting to accuse them, constantly wanting to just be on the attack, that is never going to be productive or forward moving in the recovery.
That whole process is hard. And I think sometimes it's hard to get people to understand that you're dealing with emotional wounds. You're dealing with, and I think it makes sense initially. I think people are, of course, and then people don't understand that it takes a long time for those wounds to heal. I've had couples before that have been, yeah, we've been doing this 2 months. We're going to go renew our vows. And I'm, yeah, y'all haven't done the work. Right. And then they've come back 9 months later. We're fighting. Oh, go figure. There's wounds. And one of the examples I like to use in therapy is you've got to think about, if those emotional wounds were physical wounds, what would they look like? And sometimes that helps people to understand, hey, you have to continue to be open, that open and honest you're talking about. I have people that wind up feeling super resentful. More officers, more my first responders wind up feeling resentful of, can't we just move on? I just want to move on.
Sure.
Because of course it feels shameful. And they might even be grieving. And people don't think or talk about that. And as the betrayed partner, it's painful to think about that my spouse might be grieving this other relationship. And those are things that we don't talk about as a part of the process, is that everybody has their own individual process and the couple has a process.
Absolutely. That's why in my program, I have it geared towards certain messages are geared towards the unfaithful partner, some are geared towards the betrayed partner. But I always say, please you want to hear that information on both sides, because you want to understand what your partner is going through. I think there's a lot of division out there around recovery. I think there's all different ways of doing it. I'm not saying that this is the only way, but there's, I'm just going to work with the betrayed partner, or I'm just going to work with the unfaithful partner. But if they're not knowing what the other one is experiencing and dealing with and trying to better understand, again, their experience, that's not conducive to the reconnection that needs to happen.
It's interesting you're saying that, because I'm going back to one of the first things that you said, which is this is an opportunity to, I'm going to say my word, rebuild, right? You get to do this different next time. And people many times it's hard. It's hard to do that affair recovery part.
It is.
What do you think motivates people to go through the painful process of recovering after affair as opposed to just throwing in the towel?
Probably if they've been together quite a long time and there's kids. Obviously, those are things that really, kids are a biggie that I see, at least. People say, I don't want to see my kids only half the time, or I don't want to do this to the kids, or yeah, that's what I see a lot. And just if they've been together a long time, and I think if they're rooted in, a lot of them, if they're rooted in faith, I mean, that's a big one too. Like, I don't want to, God says it's not okay, or to divorce, whatever, which I don't know. Those kinds of things, I think too. And sometimes it's cultural too. I mean, their family system cultural, or even big picture cultural, whatever. Let's, we don't do that. In our family, we don't get divorced, for instance.
Yeah.
Now we have to stick in there. And I mean, that could be good or bad, because at the end of the day, we want to be staying in our relationship because it feels right and healthy and good and solid. But yeah.
I think a big part of it too might be the fact that, it's somebody they're still at their core. We all make mistakes.
Yes.
And so at the core, they're potentially still the person, we're potentially still the people that we fell in love with. Do we change over time? Yeah, for sure. Is this something that would change the relationship? Yeah, for sure. And then I also think about, okay, well, is it just a mistake? How can I forgive and move forward with it? That forgiveness piece, that trust piece is so important. I think we're kind of ahead of finding out when you find out about the affair. We're talking about the recovery process too, but sticking with it and fighting. And I think in our relationships, I don't know what you find, but I find a lot in first responder relationships, we're committed. We're committed to stick it out. We already do hard stuff. We do hard stuff every day. We do hard stuff by not having time together, not having family time together, not having holidays together, going through the ups and downs of the social situation currently, being hated for what we do at times. We already do hard things. And this is sometimes just a hard thing. And when you get through it, it's better.
Absolutely. And I like that you brought that up because, I think that there are some stats out there that say law enforcement marriages are less likely to get divorced.
There are.
So, yeah.
It's weird because people will say 75% divorce rate. No, there's no statistics for that. Anything else that you can think of? Let me go back through. You said when affair is revealed in some way. First of all, you had said find somebody who's supporting the relationship, some kind of support for the relationship, not on one side or the other, for the relationship, whoever that might be. That would be the first thing. The second thing is maybe commit that I'm going to get through this. You've talked about the possibilities and hope. I want to talk about that. We talked about the idea of be careful of digging in. If you're the one who gets into the text messages, you see a text message pop up on a screen, be careful because you can't unsee or unknow or unlearn. Shannon, you specifically said, be careful really with the sexual part. If it's a sexual relationship, be very careful about, actually, I think you said you recommend not finding out about the details of that. You might need to know dates and those types of things. Who was this with? Are you clean? But not knowing all of those details. That many times our brain wants to fill in those gaps, right? Our brain wants to be, I need to fill in all the gaps. So tell me, where did you meet up with this person? What did you have to eat? What song was playing in the background?
Right. All the things that a lot of time they don't even remember. And that's the thing I sometimes have to help those folks when they're just living life, normal life. They're not in a hypervigilant state where they're remembering every single detail. Right. They're just living life. So they're not going to know all of these specific details that you're thinking they should remember, because there is a lot of that. You should remember what song was playing and what you ate. What? You don't remember? Right. So again, but they're trying to have trust again. They're grabbing at anything they can to just, I need to trust. And so I need to know, and it's just part of that process. To know that I need to believe that we have something unique or we have something real. Yes. I think is a part of it. I would also say, and we talked about this a little bit, the idea that both people may be struggling with shame of some kind. So as the betrayed spouse, I might be thinking, how did I not show up? Where did I fail? And that might be a part of it. And I also think the affair partner may also be thinking that I've failed. I'm ashamed of what I've done and ashamed of this behavior. So that emotional shame spiral could be a part of it too, and really get in the way. I actually speak about that in my program because that can absolutely get in the way when we're so caught up in all of our guilt and shame. We're kind of more focused on ourselves, actually, which is I really promote, let's focus on each other, the other and each other. What are we experiencing together? What are you experiencing? What's happening for you? And supporting each other around that. Yes, the guilt and shame is a piece that needs to be directly looked at and dealt with, because it's just gonna spiral you down. It's not gonna be helpful. And I think that's where a professional comes in for sure, walking through that. A big part of what you said what was really helpful in extending trust, and which also helps, I think, with the shame too, is being open. You said I got to remember the word. I think you said open. I wrote transparency down, but then I think you said open, but just be really open with sharing things, be open and understanding. It goes back to, you said, taking care of the other person. Now I'm going to work on healing your wounds because I've betrayed you. And therefore
I'm going to make sure that I am open and honest. I am going to work on earning that trust again. And then my partner, the one who's been betrayed, works on giving that trust again. And you said it takes time. I said, how do you do that? Right. And you said, people hate it, but it's time, and time is a part of it.
It's time and all of those things during that time. And if you're doing all those things, and I talk a lot about how to deal with the triggers too, because when the betrayed partner is triggered, which can happen on the front end, it could be happening multiple times a day. And when they're triggered, that's when they sometimes want to go into the attack mode because they're upset, they're worried, the insecurity is spiking, they're all over the place. I talk about this is exactly what you're triggered. This is how you approach your partner, unfaithful partner. This is exactly how you can support them in that moment, how you can hold space for that, how you can just allow them be vulnerable and allow them to be vulnerable, because that in and of itself, when they can really manage those triggers in a way that is good and healthy and supportive, then they can start again to heal and reconnect around those moments. Those are possibility moments. I kind of see them.
Can you give us an example of that?
Maybe we're watching a movie together and maybe there's a scene that comes on the movie, right? About and somebody cheated. And so the betrayed partner just the flooding of the wave and the flooding of emotions happens, and the panic and the heart starts to race, and then the tears, and then they're turning to either shutting down, right? So it's fight or flight. They could escape and leave. And so they may do that flight piece. They may just get up and leave the room and run out, and their partner's like, what just happened? Or they might just go on the attack. And if I can get that person to say, hey, I've been triggered right now. That's what's happening to me. Have that awareness to know. And then the unfaithful partner are able to turn to them and say, okay, here's what I want to do for you. And I have a very specific protocol that they go through, but it's really just about, okay, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to maybe hold your hand. I'm going to allow you just to speak. I'm going to give you reassurance. I'm going to just sit in it with you and ride this. It could literally be 5 minutes, and their nervous system calms down, and the person who hurt them, who created that wound, has now just come along and put some medicine on the wound and put a new bandage on and patted you and said, okay, does that feel better now? And so they're helping with the healing process versus the other side of the coin, which is getting mad and defensive and how dare you? And oh my God, I can't believe you're talking about this again. We're talking about this again. We're just trying to have a nice night and watch a movie.
Yes.
And why do you have to keep bringing this up?
That's what happens, right? Why do you keep bringing this up? Now I'm shaming you for your trigger. And so Shannon's making a circle kind of a situation with her hand. And that is exactly what happens. And so thank you for sharing that, because those little nuggets and information about, hey, here's a way you can do that. And you're saying that's all a part of what you have in your program too, if they need to access it. And so I think that's really important. One of the aspects of this that you've mentioned is making sure to instill hope. How does a couple keep their eye in front of them? I always think of hope as believing further than you can see. There's a scene in Indiana Jones, the third one, with the Holy Grail. Y'all are going to have to go with me on a little journey here, where his dad gets shot and Indy has to go get the Holy Grail, and he makes it through the one part, and it looks like he gets to the end and it just drops off. And I can't remember exactly what he says, but basically it's a leap of faith, right? It's a faith walk. And he sticks his leg out at a 90-degree angle, and then he brings his foot down in front of his other foot, and it lands, and it looks like it shouldn't. And he does it again, and he's able to keep walking, and the camera pans to a opposite or a different view, and you see the bridge of rock that blends exactly in. And to me, that is hope. And what he does is on the way, he gets all the way across and he throws some sand on it to know, hey, the bridge is there, right? To make it marked. And in a way, I think that is going through this process. And then the sand is, okay, what do I need to remember? What do I need to learn? There's my Indiana Jones analogy metaphor.
I love it.
Y'all are going to all have to go watch the movie again now. It's the third one, the Holy Grail one. But for you, how do couples keep hope in the front of them?
Well, what I do with them is I try to extract all the really good stuff, right? Try to talk to them about, you guys need to remember, why did you get together? What are all the good things? These are not, because this is something the betrayed partner tends to do, is rewrite their history. And I talk about that. We don't want to rewrite our history. All that stuff that happened, all that good stuff, all those good years, all those vacation moments, because sometimes it's, hey, were you talking to that person while we were on vacation? Okay, now the whole vacation and all the memories are gone. Ooh. No, all the good moments you've had with your partner, with your spouse over the years did not just disappear. They didn't just get erased. They're still there. This is still the person that you fell in love with. That person is still there. They're a person that maybe made a huge mistake. And this is another piece. It's just, I don't want to go off on the tangent, but the person that betrays, they got to look at what happened. There's so many components there. Maybe they're struggling.
That's a whole
with
other podcast.
That's a whole nother. But they're struggling themselves with something inside of them. I think we need to keep the vision, and again, I try to get them to come up with their own details about their relationship. But this is what we need to keep going back to center that this is who you really are. Mm-hmm. And these things are not gone. And when we talk about the possibilities, I keep reminding them, there's possibilities here. You're actually rebuilding and creating a whole new relationship you don't want to go back to what you had before. You actually want to create something new. You want to bring in all the good stuff, of course, but you want to now create this whole new platform to walk on and operate from. And that can be, again, just a lot more of a in-depth, deeper relationship. That's a possibility. Yeah. Just have to keep infusing that. And if they can learn to infuse that, within themselves and to each other too, a lot of just reassurance. And again, that's why I think the process happening together is so crucial. I know that doesn't always work or people able to do that, but man,
I actually
that's so
totally
powerful.
agree with you. I think doing it together and moving through it together helps to bond the relationship in a positive way. I think it's necessary. And I love that idea of, hey, just because this happened doesn't mean all of the good things disappear. It's really kind of your brain trying to make sense of it all. And many times we work with first responders, and you as first responders, many times because you are seeing all the bad things, you wind up thinking the world is a really bad, dangerous place. And one of the things that I've talked about before is looking for those positive moments. And so it's the same thing in the relationship. I do want to mention before we go here that, it is, if you are if you're a betrayed partner and you are having flashbacks, it's waking you up in the middle of the night, it's going on, it seems to be extending, that finding this out can be a trauma response. And there are a lot of therapies that can help with that trauma response. It can be post-traumatic stress. Absolutely. So absolutely, we need to, if you are struggling in that way, reach out to a therapist that can work with trauma. And EMDR, I do ART, accelerated resolution therapy. There are a lot of therapies out there now that can address the struggles that you're having. Many times what we say is you keep the facts but lose the feelings, and that's really what we're wanting to do. If you are struggling in that way, reach out to somebody. You can DM me if you want to, if you are struggling in that way, and I'll try to connect you with somebody else. Shannon, if somebody is wanting to get a hold of you, maybe they need some help, some coaching to move through an affair. Maybe they've had one, but they're like, maybe we didn't exactly do that the best way. Maybe we have some room for improvement. Or if they want to access the course, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
They can go on my website, which is reconnectedrelationship.com, and they can find out more information about me and my program. And they can even get a free resource in there that can help them just kind of get a taste of me and how I work. That's a free webinar that's within there. And then also I'm on Instagram at reconnected_relationship. So they can check me out there. I've got a lot of free stuff on there, free resources, videos they can watch, just tips. And again, can get a feel for where I stand and where I come from and all of that.
Thank you for being a resource for exactly this, because guys, maybe you are not going to be the couple that has an affair, but I can guarantee you that you will know somebody, or if you're a first responder, you will know somebody within the department that is having an affair or has had an affair, or an affair has happened in some way. Make sure you hang on to Shannon's information so you can pass it along to other people who may need it. There's not a lot of good, solid information about what to do immediately after an affair. And Shannon's a really great resource for that. Shannon, thank you so much for coming on and taking your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I loved having this discussion with you, Cyndi. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys, keep it Code 4.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about the podcast or Cyndi, check out code4couples.com. All intellectual property rights owned by CRLD2 Ventures, LLC, are protected by the firm of 9mm, 45 ACP, 5.56mm, and 12 gauge.